afternoon, everyone. It is Monday, April. What are we now today? Today is the 25th of April, if you can believe it or not, which means it's a Monday and it's our Dojo Live recap show. Running a little behind today, but you know what? Monday mood, right?
Monday
Carlos,
mood,
thank you
indeed.
so much for joining me today. I
It's
didn't
a
even
pleasure to
introduce
be here.
myself. I'm
Yeah.
Kim Lantis, co-host here at Dojo Live.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
it's been a while, right, since I think I appeared to one of these, but it's good to be back, Kim.
That's
Good
all
to be
right.
back.
It's good to have you. Thank you for joining me. So,
Absolutely.
last week we only had two shows, but you know
We
what
only
they
had two
say,
shows.
less is more, right? And they were actually two really, really great shows that I enjoyed watching. Hey, there's Tulio. We were just talking about how less is more, Tulio, with last week's two shows, but they were two great shows.
Less is more, Tulio. You can leave now. Thank you. Just kidding.
Perfect.
No, thank you for joining us, Tulio. I know you were busy, making the wheels turn and keeping the engines well oiled. So thank you for joining us. Yeah. Keeping us all fed, right? So here, thank you.
Perfect. So what were last week's shows? We had two shows last week. One was with Troy Harvey, the CEO of Passive Logic, where we talked about generalized autonomy and automation for buildings, autonomous buildings, and how they're enabling energy efficiency and providing the foundation in general for smart cities. And then we were followed up by a design thinking show with Carrie Brees, the CEO and co-founder of Now RX, and talking about the tech power pharmacy of the future. So what did you guys think of last week's shows?
Well, I've had some exposure to the world of buildings, and not because of me, because I'm not a builder or engineer, not even an architect. But I know people. I have a son who's an architect, and he introduced me to this whole thing about intelligent buildings. I find it intriguing, and I find it intriguing for a number of reasons. I have visited intelligent buildings, and I've always wondered about my main concern is what is being done with the information that's generated through across all the facilities and the software that is being used. And I mean, it's just a personal concern. I'm not saying that it is a concern that the public should have, but it's also something that I've wondered how this information is kept safe beyond the walls of the building and the servers and all that. So
which is a question you ask quite often on our shows, Carlos. You always step in as kind of the skeptical security guy, which
exactly,
I think is great because there's a whole persona. I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like one of the things that I'm personally interested in. I'm not concerned, but I'm interested, and I'm eager to see what's out there to keep all those concerns at bay. So that was about Passive Logic.
What I found particularly interesting was I didn't mean to talk over you, Tulio, and this is probably where you're headed. The mindset of looking at buildings as organisms. And then within that smart city, this network of an ecosystem, right? How the bacteria is necessary for the this and the that, and it kind of grows, and how they can feed off of one another and support one another. And
you read my mind. I mean, it just goes to show with the right context, you can create significantly different opportunities. I would have never thought of looking at a building as a robot, right? That has capabilities like you think of it as an inanimate object that's not alive, but just the context on how they view it changes and shifts what you can do. So I was so impressed with the way they thought about it. We invited them afterwards to continue to come back on the design thinking show because that just doesn't happen by accident. There's some serious thoughts behind that and some brilliant minds. And I want to find out how more companies can do that. So I was really impressed with that. And then, of course, speaking of design thinking, the conversation with Carrie was very interesting at Now RX about listening, really listening to what people have to say. Sometimes you might have a great idea, but people, like when they started talking to people, many of them had concerns about how does that work? My prescription is going to come to my home. Is that safe? So what seems like a great idea sometimes has some concerns and skepticism. To listen and then incorporate what you're listening to design something that actually meets the needs of people on their terms
Yeah.
is the critical path to success. And clearly they've done it. So there's a lot that can be learned just
And I
by.
think what was great about Carrie's approach for me, and this is something that we've learned a lot over the past of these 5-6 years on the show of Dojo Live. I think it's easy, or at least before I was interacting with C-level executives, is these, I don't know, you'd have in your mind that these are like these untouchables or like these behind the scenes people, but the truth is they put their pants on one leg at a time. And Carrie himself, when he had this idea of the tech powered pharmacy, like, I'm just going to go and I'm going to pretend that I'm, waiting for my prescription and I'm going to talk to people. And so I just think that approach of like, yeah, come on, like, honestly, the humanity that he has as a CEO, and that a lot, or even the majority, I think, of the CEOs and CTOs and others that we get to speak to really are into building what they're building for people. And I think that was pretty spectacular.
I mean, that's the beautiful thing about entrepreneurs. They're just regular people like you and I, but they have the courage to put themselves out there, to take a risk, to go solve a problem, and believe it strongly enough that they're willing to put everything on the line to do it. So that's the difference. That's really, it really comes down to that, because we all have ideas. Oh, I wish they would solve this problem, but most of us don't go out and start a whole company to try to solve that problem.
Yeah, and really even Carrie.
Nothing, right? But these guys don't grab it by it. They're like, oh, how can I go solve this for me and for everybody else? And they just go out and do it. So if you're that kind of person who's got a lot of great ideas, watch Dojo Live. You might learn a lot from these entrepreneurs and how they're going ahead and taking risks and doing wonderful things. Maybe you'll be encouraged by that.
For sure. And like the innovation that he's encouraging at his company and how he goes about doing it, I thought was interesting that it was I think he called it cross-functional approach, that they as a team get together. Obviously, with NowRx, there's the technology side, the developers involved, but there's delivery drivers and pharmacists and doctors and this whole community of people behind it, and that all of them are involved in this design, and also this freedom to make mistakes, which is how they guarantee their innovation at their company, which I thought was great, removing the fear so that people can address mistakes that are made, and I think he said something interesting too, that not at the people level, but the process level. And I thought that was pretty great.
Right. Sometimes the tendency is if something goes wrong, okay, who's responsible for this? And their mindset is, okay, what process failed us? And so the person didn't fail. Something that wasn't thought out or planned or put into motion that would cause it to be successful wasn't in place. And that's just, I think, brilliant, because it makes people act in a way where they're not afraid. And that's where true innovation comes into play. You got to remove the fear factor, or you're not going to get innovation inside your organization if people are afraid. So, yeah, a lot to learn. If you missed that show, dojo.live, that's where you go. That's the URL. Go check it out.
And if you want to geek out, of course, the Passive Logic show is a great show for that one.
Exactly. All right, guys. So what do we got coming up this week? Let's do it all over again.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we have two shows, Tulio and Kim, this week. We have one on Wednesday, and that's going to be with Alejandro Rivas. I hope I pronounced it right. Mike Out, the founder and CEO of Userlytics. That's going to be happening on Wednesday. And then finally, on Thursday, we're going to be speaking with Rob Friedman, the CEO of Zupper. We don't have the topic yet. It's still waiting to arrive in my inbox, but as soon as it's there, please, folks, visit the Dojo Live website, and it'll all be there for you to enjoy. So
maybe it's
Wednesday
Zupper.
and Thursday. It's Zupper. Well, it's a Zupper with a Z. Maybe it'll be a
single
super.
P.
Oh, maybe it's supper. You never know, right?
Who knows?
But
Rob will let us know.
Exactly. So it's remember, Zupper with a Z. That's what we have this week. So join us, everyone. Be safe.
Thank you, team.